Welcome to everyone present for this meeting in Civic Centre and also to those observing the meeting on Teams Live. No fire drills are expected this evening, so in the event of an alarm sounding, please quickly make your way out of the building. There are 3 exits from this room which members can use to vacate the premises. Please ensure you switch mobile phones onto silent or switch off and take any calls outside of the meeting room. Do not leave any bags unaccompanied and/or report any unaccompanied bags. Remember to take any bags with you when the meeting is concluded or as you leave the meeting. This meeting may be subject to filming or audio recording by others in accordance with the Council's filming protocol. Anyone who remains in the meeting following this announcement will have deemed to have consented to allow their image to be recorded and broadcast. I'd like to remind members to turn their microphones on when speaking and to sit back from the microphones to assist the audio recording. Thank you. Move to item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Bell, Mackenzie and North.
Thank you. Are there any more apologies? Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barton.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I'm going to hand over to the monitoring officer.
Thank you. In accordance with the Council's constitution, those members who are liable to pay council tax in the district must declare so at any meeting involving the setting of council tax. Can those members who are liable to pay council tax please raise their hands so that their interest can be declared and recorded? Thank you. Furthermore, those members who are tenants of a council property must also declare so at any meeting involving housing matters. Can any members that are council tenants please raise their hands so that their interest can be declared and recorded? Thank you. And then finally, I will declare a collective interest on behalf of all members in respect of allowances paid to members.
Thank you. We now move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of December 2023. Could I have a proposer and a seconder to the minutes of the Council on 5th of December 2023 to confirm the minutes as a correct record?
Can I propose them?
Thank you. Councillor Coxhead, do you have a seconder? Councillor Clay, thank you. Is everybody in agreement? Show of hands. Thank you. Move to item 4 on the agenda, receipt of correspondence laid before the Council by the Chair of the Council, elected Mayor, members of the Executive or Head of Paid Service. Have there been any correspondence?
Thank you, Chair. It's with great delight that I do inform Council that we have received the Silver Award as part of the Armed Forces Covenant Employer Recognition Scheme. And we've received the certificate here, which will be available for members to have a look at after the meeting. I'd like to offer my personal thanks to all those officers and councillors that were involved in helping us achieve this award, which is recognition really of our commitment to the armed forces. The next stage of this will be to progress on to gold, which we will start with earnest in getting there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving to item 5 of the agenda. Are there any advance questions from members of the public?
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda, advance questions submitted by members. Are there any advance questions from members?
There are 2 questions.
Thank you. Councillor Garner, would you like to put your question to the elected Mayor?
All right, thank you. My question is, I am aware local authorities have a discretionary powers, and it is not a duty to provide public conveniences. But my question is, as Mansfield District Council's finances got that dire that you need to close toilets at Mansfield Wooders and Warsop High Streets? Thank you.
Thank you. Elected Mayor?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Garner. Before I respond directly to the questions, it is important that our residents know the backstory for why we have this deficit, which has accumulated over a decade through no fault of this administration. The Conservative government have been directly responsible for most of our deficit through its policies and broken promises. Back in November 2019, when Nottingham was hit by the highest rainfall in its history, Rishi Sunak, who was the Chancellor at the time, promised to do all it could to help with the flooding. But we ended up with 0.25 million out of a cost in excess of £3.25 million for the remedial works, which resulted in that flooding. And it was this administration who then had to sort that problem out. Again, during the COVID crisis, the Conservative government only reimbursed local councils 75% of their additional expenditure during that crisis, and none of their lost income. 25% is a significant shortfall, and no government could operate with that kind of loss of income. The government failed economic policies has resulted in the longest and deepest cost of living crisis, with record increases of inflation and energy prices. And all of this against a backdrop of receiving 60% less funding from central government since 2010. The decision of the previous administration not to raise council tax for 9 years has also accounted for an estimated £8 million in lost funding and diminished our reserves. Not forgetting the biggest mistruth being continuously used by the Conservatives that Labour bought a property in London, which they know were purchased by the Mansfield Independents. It's on record that I stopped all investments out of the district from day one when I was elected in 2019. However, I have never blamed Mansfield Independents for their policy, because many councils were driven to speculative investments to support their services as a result of the Conservatives' austerity policies. The lack of supervision of construction works, especially around design and construction of fire protection works, was also indirectly as a result of Conservative policy of cutting back on funding to local authorities, so they no longer had building inspectors and allowed self-regulation by developers. And when you look at all the situations that are outstanding with those buildings all around the country, it's a result of that cut in funding. So the only true facts in those very lots of misinformation out there, it's this Labour administration that's had to find the finances to solve this problem to keep residents safe. With respect to the reasons and process we've had to undertake to balance the budget, I'm going to leave it for Craig to report to you later. But with respect particularly to the toilets in Warsop, we have been working with local partners, and we are now confident that those toilets will remain open. We are very happy that this has been achieved, and when construction works for the health hub has been completed in the early summer, there will be an additional provision of changing places toilets within the health hub. So the changing places toilets will enable residents with physical and learning difficulties and older people to use these facilities to accommodate their additional needs with dignity. Once LifeSpring have brought forward their improvement works, which we've helped enable through passing across Warsop Town Hall, more toilets will be available for use from the community there. So the provision in Warsop, we can feel assured, is going to be improved going forward, but I know it doesn't make a great headline pointing those things out. We are still reviewing all the information about the operation, use and maintenance of the Woodhouse toilets, but I want to reiterate that all decisions that we're making with regard to toilets and any of the other really difficult decisions will be made responsibly to achieve a balanced budget.
Thank you, elected Mayor. Councillor Garner, do you have a supplementary question?
Wow, I do. It's difficult. I asked about toilets. I didn't ask about anyway, we've said that. So with toilets, am I right to say that there might be still both open in the future, but where would the money be coming from to keep them open in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, so the background that you heard was the reason why local authorities all over the country, irrespective of their political colour, are writing to government for additional funding, and that's why local authorities that have been taken over by the government straight away, all discretionary services go. So it actually was the reasoning why the toilets were even on the agenda in the first place. So that's the reason I gave that background information. With regard to the Woodhouse, the toilets at Warsaw, what I said there is that we are working with partners, and so no additional monies will be coming out of our budget, but we'll be working with partners to ensure that those toilets remain open. And with regard to Woodhouse, we are still looking at the maintenance operation, and it's not just that, it's the repair works and how they are functioning at the moment. So we're still on with that, but whatever solution comes with regard to the Woodhouse toilets, we will not be taking the money from the budget cuts that we've had to make, because there's been hundreds of them and we still are working towards that target.
Thank you, elected Mayor. I'd like to now invite Councillor Wright to put your question to Councillor Whitby.
Thank you, Chair. I hope my question doesn't lead to all that. Anyway, a question to Councillor Whitby. It has been in excess of 2 months, that's November the 13th, 2023, since the monitoring officer wrote to the members and the Mayor requesting that they undertake a basic DBS check. Shortly after, on the 17th of November 2023, a link was passed to all individuals, allowing them to start the process, which takes approximately 7 days from start to finish. Will the portfolio holder for corporate and finance tell council if all 36 members and the Mayor have undertaken their basic DBS check, and did any of these checks throw up any concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I can come back and tell you that the status of the DBS checks as of 2 p.m. today stand at 29 checks completed, 6 applications that are in progress, and 2 that have yet to start. And of the ones that have been completed, they are all clear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitby. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Wright?
So there are so many outstanding checks not being completed. What is the council going to do to hurry these people up? What is the punishment, if you want, for want of a better word, for not doing it in 2 months when we were asked specifically to do it?
Well, that would be a case for the monitoring officer. I would imagine it falls under the code of conduct area of the council, and that I'd have to refer that to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Councillor Whitby. Now going to move on to item 7 of the agenda, the extract read from the Cabinet, the medium-term financial plan for 24-25 and 26-27. I'd like to invite Councillor Whitby to present his report.
Thank you, Chair. This evening we are tasked with the responsibility of approving the medium-term financial plan, which sets out the council.
We want to make an amendment to this, am I right?
Can you just, what is your point of order? Whereabouts does it
The point of order is that we want to make an amendment to sorry. All right, so
There's nothing to amend at the moment. Thank you, Councillor Whitby.
Hold your horses. Right, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'll start again. This evening, we are tasked with the responsibility of approving the medium-term financial plan, which sets out the Council's budget for the upcoming financial year. This year, we face a daunting challenge of attempting to bridge a significant £5.4 million gap over the next 3 years. This task has been undertaken with unprecedented rigour. Since last summer, the Cabinet and corporate leadership team have meticulously worked together to ensure every penny of taxpayers' money is accounted for, used efficiently and directed towards maintaining core functions of our council. Our approach to the Council's largest expenditure, the wage bill, has been both sensitive and strategic. By prioritising the elimination of vacant posts and encouraging voluntary redundancy, we've managed to reduce staff costs and minimise the need for compulsory redundancies. This reflects our commitment to a humane and responsible fiscal management. As we venture into this debate, I'm conscious of potential criticisms. Our opponents may well reframe our discussions through a lens of political opportunism, levying accusations of mismanagement. However, it is crucial to remember that these measures, though difficult, are essential for the financial health and stability of our council. The reductions in this budget have been discussed and debated at length and were made with the utmost care and consideration of their impacts. Decisions around council tax will always generate headlines, but it's important to put these numbers into proper context, as this council only receives a tiny portion of the overall council tax bill. A 2.99% rise on a Band D property equates to an increase of £5.82 for the entire year. However, in Mansfield, more than 87% of our houses are in lower bands. This means the majority of households in Mansfield will see just a £3.88 rise for the whole year. This modest increase is a necessary step to ensure that we can continue to provide essential services to our community. I cannot control what happens when County Council reviews their part of the council tax bill, or maybe some of our county councillors who are here tonight can influence that decision. Following discussions with organisations and partners that have come to rely on grants or relief from the council, I proposed some amendments to the budget report to the Cabinet on the 15th of January, which were approved. Working with organisations like the Citizens Advice Bureau to mitigate the impact of reductions, I have proposed an overall cut of 50% to councillors' ward allowances and a 5% reduction in members' allowances. Whilst this goes against the formal recommendations of the Independent Remuneration Panel that the council approved in March last year, we have liaised with them and they are supportive of the reduction in the 2024-25 financial year. These savings will be funneled directly back into the community, demonstrating our commitment to shared sacrifice and responsibility. I anticipate there may be calls for more drastic cuts. Whilst this may seem like a straightforward solution, it's important to consider the wider implications. Our council members, many of whom already receive modest allowances, are dedicated to serving their communities, often at personal financial costs and far below the minimum wage when calculated hourly. Further erosion of allowances will only serve to deter people from stepping forwards to represent their communities, and it's our duty to ensure that we maintain a council that will attract future candidates from all walks of life, such as community activists, people on minimum wage, people seeking work, blue-collared workers, white-collared workers, young professionals, as well as the people who are building careers. Every resident in Mansfield deserves a councillor to represent them, and the only way to achieve that is by having a support system in place that can attract it. This budget planning process has been both challenging and enlightening. We are presenting a balanced budget, but we must be prepared for the continuing challenges in the coming years. The rise in council tax rents is in line with government's policy. The majority of our tenants receive housing benefit, so this increase will be offset accordingly. The local government funding situation is not unique to Mansfield. The current system is broke, both figuratively and literally. The nationwide councils are grappling with funding cuts and inadequate financing models, with 1 in 5 councils predicting they're in danger of bankruptcy within 1 to 2 years. The need for stable, equitable funding for local governments is more urgent than ever. This predicament is a result of a decade of austerity and misguided government policies which have placed undue strain on local authorities. In closing, I urge all members to engage in this debate with the seriousness and empathy it deserves. Our decisions today will shape the lives of those we represent, so let's work together with foresight and compassion to guide Mansfield through these trying times.
Chair, I would like to formally propose the recommendations set out in section 2 of the medium-term financial plan 2024 to 25 to 2026-27 for council's approval.
Thank you, Councillor Whitby. Do we have a seconder? Elected Mayor, thank you.
Reserve the right.
Thank you. We're now in debate mode.
The MTFS. I wish to move an amendment to the elected mayor's proposed budget in respect of the general fund as follows. Reducing the number of councils overview and scrutiny committees from 3 to 1.
Do you use your mic, please?
All right. Reducing the number of council overview and scrutiny committees from 3 to 1, resulting in a core saving of £13,840 in each financial year, totaling £41,520 across the medium-term financial plan. 2. Keep Mansfield Woodhouse toilet open at a cost of £12,603 each year. 3. No increase in members' allowances across the full term of the medium-term financial plan. This will result in additional savings of £43,163 in 2025-26, £66,377 in 26-27, totaling £109,540. Continue the 50% reduction in members' water allowances across the full term of the medium-term financial plan. This will result in additional savings of £9,000 in 25-26, £9,026-27, totaling £18,000. And maintain grants to external bodies in 2025-26, 26-27 and 24 at the 24-25 level to enable the council to continue to support these valuable organisations. The impact of these changes on the 2025-2026 budget and the medium-term financial plan is set out in the following appendix.
Thank you, Councillor Camilleri. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you.
Chair, I would, if I may through the chair, I would like to propose we have a 15-minute adjournment so we can digest these numbers.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. We'll put it to the vote. That's unanimous. So we'll take a 15-minute adjournment. Back here for 22/7. Thank you.
So this 9,000 would be external bodies.
Yeah. So I'm going to say again.
So the £9,000 that would say
Members of the public, please be aware we are still broadcasting the meeting at the moment. Thank you.
you. We're now in debate mode. This is for the amendment.
Fellow Council, I stand before you today to propose a crucial amendment to the Council's budget. It is one that prioritises the well-being of our town's most vulnerable residents. That's not showing off. Okay, before you start. While I acknowledge the difficult choices made by the Mayor and his Cabinet in balancing this year's budget, we must confront the consequences of this drastic decision on our most at-risk citizens. Our amendment addresses two pressing concerns. A, the dire impact of budget cuts on essential local charitable organisations, and B, the closing of public toilets, which disproportionately affects marginalised and at-risk groups. Firstly, we cannot overlook the devastating consequences of defunding important organisations like the Samaritans, Citizens Advice Bureau and other charitable organisations. These dedicated and mostly volunteers provide a lifeline to those in desperate need. Practical guidance and critical assistance to individuals and families facing mental health challenges, financial difficulties and various other hardships. Eliminating the granting aid to these bodies would be a disastrous blow to our community, leaving those who rely on these services with limited or no support and nowhere to go. Furthermore, the closure of public toilets, illustrated by one in Mansfield Woodhouse, will have a profound effect on the health and well-being of our residents, particularly those with disabilities, older adults, women, outdoor workers, and individuals experiencing homelessness. The lack of accessible public toilets restricts outings from homes, don't want to go out, for a significant proportion of our population, leading to a possible health concerns, social isolation and loneliness. In light of these challenges, we believe we are presenting before you today a practical and cost-effective solution to save these services. Our amendment proposes three measures to generate savings. 1. Reduce the number of scrutiny committees from 3 to 1. 2. Implementing a 3-year freeze on member allowances. 3. Reducing ward allowances by 50%. These measures collectively amount to a considerable saving of £168,520 across the medium-term financial plan. By carrying out these savings, we can maintain the granted aid at-risk charitable organisation and simultaneously keep the public toilet in Woodhouse open, ensuring that the continued availability of essential service to those who need the most. I believe I'm reading this speech to a Labour Council. I urge you to support this amendment as it clearly benefits members of our community, both young and old. As elected representatives, we have a responsibility to set aside our differences and try and work together for the betterment of our town and its residents. Let's pull together to help these vital organisations, which provide a lifeline to those in need, remain open and continue to serve our residents. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do this. I've got a quote here from Mahatma Gandhi. So again, I can't believe I'm reading this quote. A true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable. Right. Therefore, I appeal to you to join me supporting this amendment, and together, let's create a society that values and supports all its residents. I move the amendment. Thank you.
Any comments? Whitby?
Thank you, Chair. I think we've all just witnessed the birth of a socialist. With that comment, the best thing that could happen for you guys to send a message to your Conservative leaders is for you all to resign your seats and sit as independent councils. That really would grab a headline. But anyway, I'll come back to your points and we'll do this professionally and work cooperatively. So reducing the number of councils, overview and scrutiny committees from 3 to 1, resulting in a saving of 13,000 a year. We've been through a process since the mid last term of this administration. That was a task and finish group looking at the overview and scrutiny process, and that committee agreed to stick with 3 overview and scrutiny committees. So we can't undermine that process. You've only talked about Mansfield Woodhouse. There's no mention of any other toilets that we're looking at. And there is, I appreciate that you've given me a saving and given me how you would spend that saving. But the problem we've got is it's not just the revenue costs, it's capital costs as well. And those are the decisions that help drive those difficult decisions anyway. So for that reason, I can't support 1 or 2. So increased members' ward allowance across. No increase in members' ward allowances, across the medium term. If you'd have been part of the process, the budget setting process, and been at the meeting, any of you have been at the meeting on the 15th of January, you'd have seen that I've already done this. So we've reduced the proposal in the original medium-term financial strategy was to reduce it to 75% of the cost. That has since been redone to 50% of the cost. And for 1 year only, yeah. Now we could have put those numbers in and reduced the third year a little bit, but I'm looking at this on a year-on-year basis. Continue the 50% reduction or maintain grants to external bodies. I don't think the numbers add up that you've got here, because I've been talking to these external bodies and I've got a detailed breakdown of the relief by each of them and the grants that we pay out to them, and these numbers don't quite stack up. Not to 100%.
Correct. Just come back to our.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, I would welcome a point of clarification.
The money that we're saving is to help mitigate their losses, so to speak. It was not an identity to identify. They can have that, and I think it's pretty clear that is. We're saving all that money so it can go towards helping all the organisations. But that's it.
That clarifies it, which puts, again, if you'd have been at the meeting on the 15th of January, I said just this. So the proposals that I'm putting is a £20,050 saving in members' allowance for 24-25, plus an additional £9,000 generated from ward allowance savings, gets us up to £30,000. Actually, to get there to 32%, to get to 50% of the ward allocation, will require another £2,000. We might be able to get that because the estimated 5% of this state might go up a little bit, so we might be able to achieve that. I've since discussed this at length with some of the organisations affected, and whilst it doesn't address the complete replacement of the grant that we were going to give them, it will allow them to plan to move into a stage where they can move away from the reliance on Mansfield District Council. And like all charities in Mansfield, we don't support all charities, but we can support them wherever we can. But yeah, if the money was there, if the government financed us properly, and your leader this week wrote to, sorry, not your leader, your parliamentary leader wrote to government, I believe this week, saying the current model of financing for local government is just not sustainable, and this is just a symptom of that disease. So we will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking on the amendment proposed by Councillor Connor. Although in reaction to the original budget, you've read back on some of the proposed cuts in the second amended edition. That better? Although in reaction to the original budget, you have rolled back on some of the proposed cuts in the second amended edition of your budget, the changes that you've made do not go far enough in helping to alleviate the devastating cuts that have been made to services within the district. Labour is proposing to put up council tax by the maximum amount allowed, not for more services or even to maintain current services, but to fill the financial shortfall created by their own and previous administrations' poor financial management, whilst at the same time imposing severe cuts to services and local organisations. So in other words, residents are being asked to pay more for less. The tragedy of this is that for the sake of an extra £5 or so per year, or the price of a cup of coffee in some places, services could have been retained and protected. But instead, for easy political wins and votes, the failure to raise this revenue for over a decade has created cumulative losses of nearly £9 million and the devastating cuts to services and charities that we are now seeing, such as across the board to the Citizens Advice Bureau, the Samaritans, CVS and Cruse, the bereavement charity. These are severe cuts to organisations which provide essential services for some of Mansfield's most vulnerable residents. On page 4 of the Grant in Aid section of the budget report, it states, the overall index of multiple deprivation score for Mansfield is 28.503. This does not compare favourably to the English average of 18.450. With this in mind, the Conservative group is instead proposing to limit these cuts to a 2/3 reduction in funding over 3 years and retaining one of the 2 public toilets set to be closed, by freezing members' allowances for 3 years instead of just 1 and reducing the number of overview and scrutiny committees from 3 to 1 as is standard in most other Nottinghamshire districts and boroughs. These are sensible proposals which help to continue the provision of much needed services, and I hope that members will give them due consideration. With this in mind, Chairman, I hope you support the amendment. Thank you.
Anderson. Elected Mayor.
Well, it is really quite refreshing to see this socialist policies coming from the Conservative side, and it would be great if you join us. But I mean, Conservative policy, you talk about the 9 million, and we've raised this about earlier on about the 9 million. But it's been a Conservative policy about zero council tax. You know, it's all started off Westminster, zero council tax, you know. So, you know, you can't keep swapping horses to suit the situation. It's the general underfunding. And in fact, you know, at this very late stage, all the Conservative councils across the country have written to the Prime Minister to say we want some more funding. But it's at the very last stage. So there's a conflict between government policy and what we're, you know, and we're with you. We want to help people on the doorstep. We have got that record, you know. Since we've been in power in 2019, we've contributed around £250,000 by cuts to the cabinet, by taking cuts that you've all joined in with to our allowances. But we're at the stage in most councils across the country, you're just picking on one particular point. If you take the saving there, it's got to go somewhere else. That 30% target, we've been on it since July, and there's no meat left on the bone. But what we want to be is fair. And Craig, the portfolio is set out where we've had negotiations with all these, the gift in aid, you know, CAB, Samaritans, and we will continue to work with them. But just like everybody's household in the country, whether it's a business, a household, a council, and charities, they've got to look at their organisations and cut their cloth according to the current financial situations. But we will do everything we can, you know, to help them to maintain. And we already do provide a lot of those services, but we can't support this amendment for the reasons that Councillor Whitby has set out.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair, for bringing me in. I mean, if I were in that noisy but small group of Conservatives group, I would be doing exactly the same thing, because what you're doing here, or what they're doing, is political gerrymandering and trying to pull wool over people's eyes. Because people out in Mansfield and District know the reason why local governments are struggling to provide services. They know the reason why they're struggling to provide statutory services, let alone discretionary services that we have no legal obligation to fund. Now, at the end of the day, when you get a leader of the county council signing a letter to the Minister for Levelling Up
and Environment, saying that they are all disappointed in relation to the autumn statement, which gave no extra money to local government, something somewhere is wrong. Because you're in a position where you can criticise us because we're having to implement the problems that your government is actually forced upon us and other local government. Up and down the country, councils of all political stripes are struggling to make ends meet. They're struggling to provide statutory services. When we were at Scrutiny Committee, we discussed and debated the situation in relation to paying money out to charities. Now, we had a full and frank debate, and nobody can accuse me as chair of that committee that I didn't allow people from the opposition to have their say. And at the end of the day, we made a decision. However, reluctantly, we made that decision to push forward because we all knew and we all accepted that the local government was in a financial situation that was terrible. It was unprecedented. When you talk about allowances, don't forget our allowances are set by an independent remuneration panel. They come in and they go through everything, and then they make a recommendation to this council to either accept or not accept. Plus, it's linked into the local government employees finance settlement. Admittedly, we've already put forward that for the next year, we will not accept the 5% or we'll not be paid. I haven't heard anything from the 3 county councils over there about doing exactly the same thing at County Hall, where, and it's for public record, you can see how much I get, you can see how much each one of them get. It's a lot more than some of these members, and it's a lot more than some of our members who are actually on benefits and are struggling like everybody else. So it's a red herring. Just throw that out. Oh, we'll cut allowances. Cut allowances and cut your money at County Hall at the next budget meeting when it comes, Andre. You make a recommendation that you're going to cut your allowances at whatever assistant cabinet member you are out there. And let's see how far that goes down. Not so much with opposition, but with your own members, because you know you'll struggle. I mean, at the end of the day, we've ended up debating. We're going to have to make cuts forced upon us by your Tory government. And that is the reality of the situation. If money was coming in and our local government settlement was as much as it was 15 years ago, we wouldn't have to do this. But over the last 13 years of incompetence from your lot, you've ended up causing local governments to come in and struggle to the effect that we are struggling to provide statutory services, not discretionary services. So at the end of the day, and we all admit it, it's just banging the drum from your lot. Just banging the drum, trying to make cheap political points. And at the end of the day, we've had a cabinet that's gone through the budget, that has been scrutinised thoroughly, been brought to council for us to agree on. So I move, or I support not supporting the amendment. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. Councillor Bergen.
Thank you, Chair. There's a few points there, and I do echo a lot of what Councillor Rosehill just said. Just a few points I wanted to pick up on. We all know local government is struggling. The Conservative government and the previous one have delayed the fair funding review, which is supposed to look at local government finances. Nobody knows. There's not even a plan for when that's going to happen. It's not going to be in this Parliament, is it? Because they've called an election this year. So it's not going to happen again in another term of Conservative Parliament. So you don't have to be ashamed of yourselves and your own party. You've made reference to £9 million that are lost in increasing council tax, and there has been revenue lost from increasing council tax. However, one thing that is pointing out, some of those years, under the Mansfield Independence, there was actually a grant from the government to tell them not to put council tax up, a one-off grant. But that grant didn't continue the year after, and the year after, it was a one-year thing that was then taken away, which led to more cuts. We're in this situation of cutting budgets because of Conservative policy. So I think it's disgraceful that you come with this politically motivated, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. We've gone through a scrutiny process where half of you didn't even attend and make these points. You could have done that
We could have had due course to then consider these rather than being thrown on the table at the 11th hour. It's absolutely disgraceful and you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. One other point I want to add on, you're talking about saving public toilets. I don't see a plan in here for Warsaw. So maybe when you sum it up, you can tell us what your plan is for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cal.
Chair, we were informed that negotiations to save Warsaw toilets were going. So we thought it would be fine to save the. Sorry, yeah, we thought that's why we didn't include it, because we knew you were negotiating.
It's not a point of order. Thank you. Councillor Stendhal.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to actually, believe it or not, commend the chairman of the scrutiny who did look at this budget scrutiny for his fair approach to everyone who attended the meeting. I attended the meeting, I didn't and couldn't attend, but I'd like to commend him for his fair work on that committee that when he did go through the process. First of all, I'd like to say that in support of him. Looking at this Conservative amendment, personally, I'm pleased to see that someone's put an amendment forward. I think it's probably a first in this chamber in my 20 years of being in council. There's some things I do agree with, there's some things I don't. But one of the things I do agree with is it's no secret, it's to anybody in this chamber that I would like to see scrutiny committees reduced. However, that ship has sailed. It should have been done in the last term when the opportunity with the voting numbers were there. So it has sailed and it's an opportunity lost. Maybe in the future there would be an opportunity then. So basically that's what I want to say on this motion for this time. Thank you.
Does anybody have any more comments? Councillor Dennis?
I'd just like to say, when it comes to this budget, on the overall view and scrutiny, hard decisions had to be made. And that is just a reality I think everybody can understand. And as hard as it was, we had to make hard decisions in order to save other services. Yes, losses were sadly made, but I would also like to concentrate on the fact that we actually did manage to save a lot of stuff in this budget. And it's a situation of concentrate on what you did save as opposed to what you didn't save.
Councillor Whitby, as the original proposer, you have the right to reply.
I've said everything I intend to say on this amendment. Thank you, Chair. And other than to say we will not be voting for the amendment.
Point of order. I reserve my right to speak.
You did, but you was asked if anybody wanted to speak. You didn't. If you want to speak, you can do.
Thank you. That's a first. I didn't know you had to also put your hand up if you reserve your right to speak, but okay. So thank you, Chair. I rise to this amendment on the budget, second this amendment on the budget, proposed by Councillor Camilleri. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Section 151 officer Dawn Edwards and her team for the work on all of the budget, not just this bit, but the whole budget. And also for meeting with our group and ensuring that our alternative budget proposal is properly and legally costed. Everything we're advocating in this proposal is legal and is also in line with other councils in the county and around the country. For example, reducing the overview and scrutiny committees down to one committee is nothing new. Councils in Nottinghamshire alone that only have one scrutiny committee and one chair with an allowance include Gedling Borough Council, Bassett Royal District Council and Broxtowe Borough Council. And what two things have those three councils got in common? They are all Labour controlled and all have along with most district councils in the county, a lower basic allowance for councillors. When the sun shines, and in a perfect world, perhaps it would be good to have higher allowances and additional allowances for more chairman and cabinet roles. Maybe this would encourage more people to get into politics and into public service. But the sun isn't shining, it's raining, the roof's leaking, and we're desperately trying to keep the rain out. This is the time to cut our cloth accordingly. Whilst we wanted to find the money to keep both the toilets open in Warsop and Woodhouse, sadly we could only find the money to keep open the Woodhouse toilets. And that is on the understanding that the council is talking to Warsop Parish Council about the possibility of them taking responsibility for the Warsop public toilets. So we'll trust that this council will do everything it can to make that happen with our full support, whilst offering up this alternative to allow the Woodhouse toilets to be kept open. So that is why we are advocating for this council to make a real statement and say to the residents of Mansfield that we hear you. We know you're struggling. We know that lots of voluntary agencies are struggling. We are going to do what we can to help. And we can do that by committing to no rises in members' allowances throughout the entire term of office, by doing away with 2 scrutiny committees and their associated allowances, by saving the Woodhouse toilets, and by maintaining the grants to external bodies for the remainder of this term of office. I would urge all councillors, whatever your political colour is, to join us in voting for this amendment to the budget to give some additional certainty to residents in these difficult times. Thank you.
Councillor Whitby, would you like to have the right to reply as the original proposer?
Propose any amendments, Chair?
It's the original proposer, the original motion, sorry.
I would do not vote on the proposed amendment first. Okay.
So just so we're clear, so the original motion was yours, councillor Whitby, for the budget. There was then an amendment. Because it's an amendment to your original motion, it will be for you to respond if you wish to, before we then go to the vote on the amendment.
I think I've already responded with what I need to say.
Thank you. Now move to the recorded vote.
Okay, if members could please tell me whether they're voting for, against or abstaining. For the amendment, I will read everybody's name out who is present. Elected Mayor. Against. Councillor Abs. Against. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Answer. Against. Councillor Beatrice.
Against.
Councillor Brown. Councillor Bergen.
Against.
Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Camilleri. Councillor Clay. Councillor Coxhead. Against. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hartshaw.
Against.
Councillor Lynn Henshaw.
Against.
Councillor Paul Henshaw.
Against.
Councillor Hughes. Councillor Inkle. Councillor Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Langwick.
For.
Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Roxon. Councillor Richardson.
Against.
Councillor Stendhal. Councillor Stevenson.
Against.
Councillor Swinscoe. Councillor Tempest Mitchell. Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Wetton.
Against.
Councillor Whitby
Against.
and Councillor Wright.
Against.
Thank you. The amendment wasn't carried. 27 against and 6 for. We'll now move to the debate on the original motion. Does anybody have any comments? Councillor Stevenson?
I just want to say that the measures that we're having to make today are a result of a total inept management from central government, 13 years of local council cuts. This isn't a game. The cheap political point scoring that's been proposed previously, it's just not on. These are decisions that affect everybody's lives. It's not a Labour or a Tory issue, it's an everyone issue. 1 in 5 councils are worried about bankruptcy this year or next. Our own MP said, and I quote, "I suggest all council leaders, I'm really disappointed that the local government settlement doesn't deliver the additional support councils have been looking for. We can't on the one hand have funding levels that are increasingly insufficient, but on the other hand continue to have the same statutory duties and regimes of inspection that demand the same levels of service as before. This is not feasible or sustainable. In light of the settlement, truth is that even well-managed and stable councils like ours are still having to look at things and take spending out of the budget because we don't have the money. Unless government steps up and helps, that will be the case to some extent pretty much everywhere." Saying that, form's been handed around a letter that's been signed by numerous councillors, including Councillor and MP Ben Bradley. I'd suggest all council leaders, including Notts County Council leader, Councillor Ben Bradley, write to MP Ben Bradley and ask him to stop voting for decreases in local government funding.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Lanwick?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The tens of millions of pounds of investment that Mansfield is receiving from the Conservative government's Levelling Up programme stands in sharp contrast to the £5 million shortfall in the council's finance presented in this budget by Labour, which proposes closure of basic amenities like public toilets and devastating cuts to charities doing essential work in our community. It is true that in the aftermath of the financial crisis of 2008, made worse by Labour's excessive spending, that funding from central government has reduced, and that pressure on budgets continues thanks to COVID and inflation, which has been caused by increased demand, global demand after COVID and the war in Ukraine. It is important to remember, however, that reductions would have occurred regardless of who was returned in 2010, and indeed they were initiated by the last Labour Chancellor. In addition, all councils have faced these same pressures, but not all are having to impose the kind of cuts proposed in this budget. Indeed, the Conservative County Council leader has written to the Chancellor to ask for more funding because funding for first-tier authorities is particularly under pressure in unitary authorities, but unlike Nottingham City Council's Labour-led authority, the County Council isn't on the point of bankruptcy. So the reality is that decades of poor decision-making and political short-termism are also to blame. For example, under Labour, the signing of a 99-year lease for a car park that has only a 50-year lifespan, costing nearly £5 million to repair and losing the council nearly £400,000 per year in running costs. In addition, there is the Berry Hill development, where planning permission was granted without any due diligence on the stability and ownership of the Quarry Bank, leaving the council liable for works costing over £3.5 million when the bank collapsed. And most costly of all, the ill-judged purchase of a block of flats in London
where the only income generated is rental income from one retail unit and nominal ground rent fees, which has now failed fire safety regulations.
Yeah, the point of order is there's disinformation coming from the Conservatives. Can I have a ruling from somebody in relation to who actually bought that block of flats in London? Thank you.
Can I just say, I didn't say it was Labour. I didn't say who bought it. No, I didn't. I said the Labour was a reference to the car park, the Walton Street car park.
It isn't a point of order.
Most costly of all, the ill-fated purchase of a block of flats in London under the last independent mayor, where the only income generated is rental income from one retail unit and nominal ground rent fees, but which has now failed fire safety regulations, leaving Mansfield residents with a bill of £20 million to put right. It is important for local decision makers to take responsibility for their own actions rather than simply pointing the finger at central government. And Mansfield residents deserve an honest answer to the question of how the council arrived at this point. Ultimately, these costs have become necessary because Mansfield's Labour and independent councillors have repeatedly put short-term political gain above raising the money needed to fund services. Time and again, they have ducked the difficult decisions which would have protected the council's finances, resulting in cumulative losses in revenue of nearly £9 million. In other words, almost double the financial black hole that this budget belatedly attempts to fill. I'm sure that Kingswalk residents would have gladly paid an extra £5 per year to ensure that their services were maintained. Instead, they are now being asked to pay more to see their services cut.
Being since the Tories are wanting to bring up the alleged mistakes of past Labour governments, I think a little number that I heard once should be brought up. NASA managed to do a Mars mission for less money than test and trace during COVID. So I think there's a lot of fingers to be pointed there more than it is at Labour in terms of where the country's national budget went during the pandemic. But all that to one side, when it comes down to a local level, on Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I was part of the hard decisions that had to be made. And it is regrettable that cuts had to be made, but they did have to be made. And we fought to save the best services we could. There are services in Mansfield District Council that help the residents. I represent Parkhole Ward, and I had to I made decisions that I thought was best for my ward and for the rest of the constituency. There are services out there that help people in the numerous ways that we did save.
Yeah, this is the budget for the residents of Mansfield, and irrespective of what colour you are, you know, it is about helping Mansfield. And yes, the independents did buy that block of flats. Why did they buy that block of flats? Because they'd got no money and they'd got to go out there to get more money in. And actually, if it hadn't have been for the corruption of how those flats were built, actually, we wouldn't have a deficit. It would have been a very good investment. And I will say that for them. Also, looking at if we are dealing in party politics, actually, if the Tory government looked at how many billions they'd given to their mates, actually put that round the country, none of the councils would be in the positions that they are in now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Bergin.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Langwick for reminding us already of the global banking collapse in 2008. Unfortunately, it's not the Labour Party's fault. It was a global crisis. And the Chancellor at the time did start to cut local government, because that's what you do when you have a financial crisis. You make cuts. You don't continue them for 14 years. That's what's caused the issue we're in. With regard to the flats, I didn't support the commercial investments that were being made by the previous administration at the time, but I understood why they were being made, and that was to try and generate an income to replace the cuts that the Conservative government had been putting on this council. Now, it was, in hindsight, a bad decision to buy that property, but at the time, it was a sound investment that made a good return.
And Councillor Camilleri, it's a bit strong as a former Mansfield Independent councillor and cabinet member that you sat there shaking your head at decisions that you were involved with at one point. So it was absolutely disgraceful.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't a member of the Mansfield Independents. I was a member of the Mansfield Independent Forum, and I left as council in
I believe I said Mansfield Independent Forum, that's what I said.
Council.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Thank
No,
you.
clear this up.
I said Mansfield Independent Forum, that's what I said.
Council in 2007. The decision made was in 2015.
Thank you, Chair. So a lot of the points that have just been thrown around, I mean, another thing Councillor brought up was the capital funding we're being given through for many different projects, and that is great. We welcome the investment. However, if you was in fair if you'd understand that you can't use capital investment for one-off projects to fund revenue spend. We're given that capital on the basis of the bids that have been submitted for the project it's been submitted for. If we don't spend it on that project, it goes back to government. We can't move it to the revenue fund. So if you're going to come out making sweeping statements, I think you need to look into things and actually understand how the process works. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Stendhal.
Thank you. This is not aimed at Councillor Bergin, but when people are actually mentioning independence, could you please be clear that you are talking about Mansfield Independent Forum or Mansfield Independence? Because when we use the term independence, that includes me, and it's not necessary. No, I'm not talking about you. That includes me, and I'm an independent and have been for quite some years now. So that's just the first thing. This is a moving document that we're talking about. We can approve it today because it needs to be approved. It has to be balanced, but tomorrow it can move. Tomorrow it can change. So it's about what's on the table today. Some things in the budget overview group that I can fully understand and I agree with. A lot of them we had to go the way we did with them, but they're not quite as many as I would have liked. That's the way of the committee, the way the vote went, and how the discussions went. I'm not really happy to see ward allowances reduced and changed. Simply for me, for my residents, the ward allowance, my ward allowance is actually being spent on council responsibilities. So the less we get in that ward allowance, my ward is getting less on council responsibilities. So I'm not really happy with that at all, because there's no other way that Grange Farm Ward can gain any funding from anywhere. We have no more future developments present at the moment, so we have no 106 in place. So for me, I'm not happy about that. So from where I'm sitting here, we have to approve this because it has to be balanced, it has to be legal, and all these, the two that we've had presented tonight will have been signed off by the monitoring officer and the 1076 officer, 101 officer, 151. There's that many numbers. I'm getting on a bit. But as I said before earlier on, we did have to look at this. Now, there weren't members that didn't attend that scrutiny overview meeting that should have done. And had they have done, maybe the outcome to the cabinet, the recommendations to cabinet could have been different. I'm not totally 100% happy with what's on the table, but as I say, this is what's before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stendhal. Councillor Abbs.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out about people being members and what we're doing here. We're here for Mansfield. I've become councillor, not because of money, not because of anything else, because I want to. I want to help Mansfield and Independent Mansfield and everybody else out. The communities, the children, the old, the young. I have been doing this, working with charities, working with councils for 30 years, in youth clubs and everywhere else. Not once have I made any money or done anything other than give it out. I am here to serve, and if you're not here to serve, doors there.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Councillor Henshaw.
Chair, a bit of history lesson. It's 100 years since we had first Labour government, in 1924. And we've only ever been in power for about 39 years in all of that 100 years. And we've, you know, you just think that things we did like National Health Service that all Tories and Tory MPs voted against. But there you go. So there's a bit of history for you. And you might not like it, even though Gordon Brown did get us out of the financial crisis because of his ability to work with other countries and with the financial institutions, and that shows you are a good. And it's a myth, you see, what you sort of push out that it was our fault, but it wasn't. So, but I don't blame you because you're trying to defend the indefensible. You're trying to defend 13 years of Tory cuts and austerity. And I suppose there were a little bit of coalition time during that. But, you know, the Mayor and Cabinet have put before us a balanced budget that's been scrutinised by councillors as well as we can do it. We were there, we went through everything. And admittedly, there was a few half-hearted attempts from noisy Tories to try and, you know, change a few other things, but they were voted down at committee, which is how things work, you know. But there is an opportunity. Well, there would have been an opportunity at that time. You could have gone to Democratic Services and put a minority scrutiny report in and put that forward with your ideas and your proposals. But you never did that. You know, and in all years I've been in this chamber, I've had honour of working with loads of councillors of all political stripes, hard-working men and women that cared for the town and district. And some of them I disagree with vehemently, and I oppose what they did. For instance, when we built Watermeadows, the Tory group at that time, I think there might have been 5 then, they just wanted us to pour a 25-metre tank in. We pushed forward Watermeadows complex, and look at the results that and other facilities that we've provided, which are not statutory, with regard to our town being at the fore of swimming. Olympic, Paralympic swimmers and people from schools who've learnt to swim because of Tom Lancaster visionary. He put forward all these things in relation to leisure. So, you know, I've worked with people, and at the end of the day, those people, the Tories that I work with, Albert Curtis and Tony Groves, who used to be a Taylor Charlie in Lancaster, didn't war, they cared about this town. They'd argue blacks white in here, but when the vote came, when we went outside, we could still pass the time of day, and that's how it should be. Unlike today, when we have a debate in here and then people slink off and go on the unregulated social media to make cheap points, which brings this council into disrepute. And some of those old Tories, some of these new Tories aren't able to tie their shoelaces. And I say that as a socialist and a Labour Party member that's been in Labour Party for 50 years. Now then, where have I got to? Jacob mentioned Mars. And I think you've got to have been living on Mars for the last 13 years to understand how local government's been underfunded from central government. And it's not only our council that's been underfunded. And you're right, county council network. Look at LGA, look at SIPFA, look at all the county council network pamphlets and things that they put out. I mean, everybody were disappointed after the autumn statement, which gave no extra money to local government. You know, they missed a trick really with November autumn statement, because they could have put some money in, but instead, no, they want to put it in the bank to try and buy people off when it comes to the election. But I tell you something, people's seen through you. They've seen through you, and you're going to get, like we got when we were all kicked out, you get a kick in every now and then, but that's democracy, and sometimes you have to accept it with good grace and accept what you get. Right, and it's been pointed out, even our MP and Notts County Council leader signed that letter from the Notts, from the County Council network, expressing his disquiet and disappointment. So there we go. That's what the situation is. Do you think we come into this chamber to make cuts? We want to make sure that our people in Mansfield have a decent quality life. We want to make sure that services are there for them. Make sure that they, on the index of deprivation, I won't be going up and saying, well, that's because Labour Council. It's a direct result we're so low is because of your government and your government's policies. So don't come with that one. That's totally a red herring. Now then, I've lived in Mansfield all my life. I've never wanted to move anywhere else, and to echo my mate up there, Brian Lowen, I love the town and I don't want to live anywhere else. I don't want to move. And I've lived here and I've tried to put through my service on this council ways in which we can support our local communities. That ward allowance that we're cutting from 1,000 down to 500, when you go up to Oak Tree Lane School and you ask them who funded their Easter egg presentation, who funded their Halloween presentation on Oak Tree Lane School, I did out of my ward allowance. And I'm very disappointed that we're going to have to cut back on that. Now, has all Conservatives spent all their money? Have we spent it? We don't know. But I suggest that they all haven't spent it. And I don't mind if I'm wrong on that. But we get through our money and we put it into worthwhile causes. So I'm disappointed, like Councillor Stendhal, on that issue. And you talk about capital expenditure, you talk about town's money, and isn't it right that our mayor goes forward and works to try and get capital monies into this town that's been devastated right back to when you shut up pits? You know, I've got a long memory. I can remember what you like. You come now with ingratiating smiles and extended hands, but I can remember when you were nasty. You know, and you're there. And I know I've only got 5 minutes and I'm winding up now, but that capital money that we're getting does not make up for the shortfall in money, in revenue monies, in monies that we haven't had through local government finance. Everybody in this room vote against the amendments, we've already done that. Vote in favour of the Cabinet's budget. Thank you.
Councillor Henshaw. Councillor Wright.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
It should be from me.
I find myself rather fortunately agreeing with everything Councillor Henshaw says, and that doesn't happen very often, does it, Councillor Henshaw? But I do. So I'll just say what I was prepared to say. We're here tonight to approve or otherwise the Mayor's budget for 2024-25, which currently indicates a deficit of £2.2 million, a deficit that forces service cuts, a maximum increase in council tax of 2.99%, and a probable loss of between 30 and 40 jobs. This is unprecedented in my 13 years as a Manchester District Councillor, and probably in all the years since 2003 when the independent administrations took over the running of the council. And that isn't poking criticism at anyone who came before that, but I don't know. Most of us here agree that the government cuts are the most instrumental cause of the predicament we face as a council. But there are other factors. Some can be levelled at the government, some at previous administrations of this council. There's been little progress on the government's promise of a fair funding formula for local government, announced in 2016, and even though there have been 2 consultation exercises in 17 and 18, we're no further forward with that. It keeps being putting on a back burner, like the social care work they were doing in 2010. That was supposed to be implemented by the then Prime Minister David Cameron, and they didn't, and no Prime Ministers since have implemented it either. Locally and currently, there's a huge drain on council's financial resources is the Walkden Street multi-storey car park. A 99-year lease signed in 1975 by, again, a previous administration with no escape mechanism for the getting out of this arrangement for a building with an estimated lifespan, and this is government, the council's own figures of 50 to 75 years. So that doesn't sound like a very sound bit of business to me. But that business in the past is costing this council, £423,000. It's cost Walkden Street car park cost this council last year in the lease rates and insurance, etc. and we only delivered an income of 40 grand out of that. So it's costing us a fortune to run that car park. And even in good times, pre-pandemic, it was still costing us £300,000 to run. So that is a drain on the resources we have, and less resources year on year. And those who've taken the opportunity to see the paper that was presented to Overview Scrutiny Place can see that we've got a long list of works to be carried out on Walkden Street over the next few years, totaling in the region of £3 million over the next 3 years. That's a lot of money this council's got to find. It's really a millstone around our necks, and I just hope that we can find the money somewhere to sort that car park out once and for all. Some members have mentioned that council tax should have been raised more often, and it was a mistake not to do so. Again, asking the hard-working people of Mansfield to stump up more money on their already increasingly large council tax bill. But there are other ways of bringing money into the council, as been touched on earlier in this debate. To conclude, the council is in an unenviable position, a deficit of £2.2 million, but it could have been much, much worse. Can I draw members' attention to page 24 of Appendix 1 of the budget report? A little chapter there, well, a little paragraph, investment property income. That much maligned subject which the independents have been hammered with by other parties and used as a big stick against us, but they claimed it was the wrong thing to do. Well, I'll say this to those people: it's time that you now, seeing the predicament this council's in, time to shake your head and ask yourselves, where would this authority be without that £2.9 million income from investment properties? I'll tell you where we would be. Would be at a deficit in excess of £5 million, more service cuts and more job losses. So all I can say is that I'm disappointed with some of the things in the budget. We all are. But I'll support it because it's something we've got to do, and we have no alternative until the government get their hands in the pockets and give this authority more money. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Garner, you indicated? Sorry, I've got you down as indicated. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. As much as I'd like to stand up and make some party political broadcast and take cheap jibes, I've been known to do that. This isn't a game. I'm going to say some things that people aren't going to like in this place, but we've spoken a lot. Well, we've spoken a lot about this budget this evening, and what we haven't spoke about is how this budget is going to affect people in Mansfield. The only thing we have spoke about and the people that are going to be affected is when it's come to the question of cutting our allowances. That's the only effect we've spoken about. Some member from the Labour Party made the point that, well, it incentivises the best candidates and the right people to come into this place. MPs were never paid until I think the early 1900s. Are we seriously saying we've got a better calibre of MPs every time we put the salary up? I don't buy that. We're not across the board. Another point was made, well, some members are on benefits and essentially relying it to top up their income. I don't agree with Councillor Abbs on much politically, but I absolutely endorse the comments that he said, and I've got respect for those comments. We're not here to make money. We're not here to top up our income. And I commend those, and there are many on that side of this chamber that give most of, if not all of the allowance away every month, and they should be commended for that. But we're not here to talk about how it affects us if we were to take a pay cut, and I think we should, and I think this budget moving forward, we should get into a sensible discussion about councillor allowances. I'd like to see them go completely, and the reason for that is this: we are here because we represent the people in Mansfield. We're not here to make money, we're not here to make a career out of it. We're here because those people, when they went to the ballot paper, voted us here to represent them. the effect it's going to have on those people, and it's all in the documentation. I'm not going to go through everything, but even their own impact assessments, the closure of toilets, it's going to, this is from their own impact assessments. It's going to affect all the people with mobility issues. It's going to affect parents and carers. It's going to affect women and girls, given they use the toilet more often, being on the menstrual cycle. It's going to affect rough. No, this is in your documentation. It's going to affect rough sleepers because they're going to be disproportionate impact. And then we get into the shop mobility scheme. That's going to affect people that can't afford to purchase their own mobility scooters to get around town. All the adverse things that's going to happen, the council tax rises, the rent rises, they're all going to impact people out there. And I've got a lot of respect, not for the current Labour Party, but I think it was Harold Wilson, and you quote Mahatma Gandhi, I'll quote Harold Wilson said in 1962 that the purpose of the Labour Party is to be a moral crusade. It isn't moral when we're elected if we don't take the first hit. We need to take the first hit financially before we expect people out there to suffer. That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing, and I'll wrap this up quickly, the investment in the property. We know it was a Mansfield Independent investment. I'm talking about the flats in London. I went to Clapham yesterday and there's very interesting things for the people in that block of flats. I'm not going to talk about that because some of the things I was told have caused me concern. That will come out as it will. But the point is this: we're still paying. We paid 200 grand last year to the security company to monitor that place. We're still throwing money at it. So just by saying, well, it wasn't us that bought it, that's not our problem. We still have this investment. We're still spaffing money away on it, as we are on other investments. This budget needs to trigger some serious discussions about the state of this local authority. People might be laughing about it. People on the street aren't laughing. Residents aren't laughing at these proposals. I'm glad that the Labour Party find this funny, because I don't. We need to have some serious discussions moving forward about cutting our pay, cutting the allowances to this place, and what we're going to do about the Walton Street car park, the Four Seasons, the flats in London, the hotels, wherever else. We need to have some serious discussions because we're in the mess at the moment. And people out there are sick of us having to go at each other every time we come and sit here. They're not bothered about who's Tory and who's Labour. They're bothered about paying the council tax bills. They're bothered about the way we're wasting money. So we need to have a sensible discussion. I can't support this budget where we are. The only other thing I'll say is this: we're taking money away from charities. The Samaritans are going to have to leave Mansfield. Please. That charity provides, we all know, I imagine in this place, somebody that has been touched by suicide and mental health. That charity does very important work locally. They're going to have to now leave Mansfield as a result of what we're doing to them. We are prioritising our own allowances. Above
Beaches.
Thank you, Chair. I must apologise, I can't stand the popcorn. Sorry. Right, I must apologise, I can't stand the popcorn bag. I want to say I was voted in by the Day Award for my community for the hard work that I do for my residents. And as a part of the Labour Party, although when we raise the money for charities, we don't say the Labour, we just say the councils coming together in the area to raise money. We do that constantly on a monthly basis to raise money. So nothing is more passionate to me than the community. And taking a cut in these allowances for the community, which has been a hard decision, and you know, it's one that we've had to take, but not through any fault of our own, for the Tories, for their cuts, and for the mistake that the other party did prior to us, regardless of who they were. They left us in debt and we had to stop it. We pour our heart into our communities every day as district councillors, not just one of us, all of us. And as a Tory government, they've stopped us getting the money that we need. We have took a cut in the allowance. There's no other way because of the debt that we've been left with. that when the Prime Minister came to Woodhouse, did he want to go to the public toilet? Did he want to give us funds for this public toilet? Did he want to give us funds for Hetties who's struggling to get a new heating system? Does he want to give money in our communities? Does he want to put his hand in his pocket and give up his time? Some of us councillors work 18 hours a day in our communities for our residents. We haven't all got posh flash job. Yeah, I'm in a council house and I'm proud of being in a council house. So if it's going to hit anybody by putting the rate up, it's going to hit me as well, because I'm one of those that are partly topped up with benefits, because obviously I only have a small allowance and I put all my money back into the community and work very hard in it. Also, I've listened to what Councillor Brown has to say, and I'm not going to comment other than if you put as much energy into helping and turning up for these scrutiny meetings to get this done with, we wouldn't have to do this thing on our own. We'd have a joint decision and have it done, but it's done now, so let's get it over and done with. If you put as much heart into that as putting things on Facebook or going on Darren Brown's show, you know, if you put as much heart into that and put it back into the community that really needs it, because if you went round into my ward, they'll say I'm one of the best councillors. You go into any one of these other wards, they'll say you're one of the best councillors. You go into your ward, they say, oh, who's he? Is that him on Facebook? So I suggest we move forward, we've messed about now, and we need to vote on this budget and do it. But since we're all quoting, I'd like to quote from Winston Churchill. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage and the continue that counts. And us Labour Party continue to bail you other parties out and sort out your messes. So get off your high horses, get off your Facebook, and let's have something done about it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beaches. Councillor Moxon.
Yeah, absolutely. How can you follow that? I mean, that was, yeah, maybe I should just sit down now, but thank you, Chair, for bringing me in. And can I say, firstly, thank you to Councillor Whitby. Clearly, a lot of work has gone into this budget by you and also by the Section 151 officer and the monitoring officer. So it's noted that you've gone a little greyer in this last year, Craig. So yeah, that happened a long time ago. Anyway, sadly, I can't support this budget. I can't support a budget whereby we're agreeing to make more cuts to services, making staff redundant and closing the Woodhouse toilets, while simultaneously we're budgeting for us as councillors to continue to have rises over the following 2 years. I'm not sure that I can, in all good conscience, accept a future rise, which will contribute to cuts in services. I'm disappointed that some Labour councillors have spoke in this debate and had a dig at the Conservatives and the boring line about 13 years of Tory rule, then in the next breath said that this is not party political. I didn't think that our amendment was in any way party political and was actually a suggestion for a way forward, but that's been voted down, so that's the end of that. Let's be clear, there is an elephant in the room, and that is the London flats in Clapham. I think we'd be having a very different conversation today about cuts had it not been for that purchase. And the zero rises in council tax. Yes, in some of those years, the government incentivised councils to have the zero rise, but not in most of them. And this Labour administration got onto that bandwagon by also doing zero rises, adding to the problems. Whether the money comes from central government or local taxation, the taxpayer has to pay. Councillors had the tools to raise the revenue, but they failed to use those tools, causing losses, not just for 1 year, but cumulatively. And this was irresponsible management of the council's finances. There are some elements of this budget that I can agree to, and it's pleasing that there have been some last-minute changes to this budget, which is, I'm sure, coincidental to Councillor Brown's social media posts that weekend. However, those changes ended up in the final budget, it's not quite enough because I know that there was an alternative. So I'm sorry, but I can't support this budget in its current form.
Thank you, Councillor Moxon. Does anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Camilleri.
I'm going to vote. I don't really. I want to vote against this budget. I want to talk about the dire situation at Mansfield District Council. We as the opposition, that's what we are, have a duty to hold you, Mr. Mayor, and his predecessors accountable for their actions. And we demand honesty in our decision-making process got into this mess. It's not just good enough to fail-safe thing. Let's blame the Conservatives, because that's what you're doing. You're doing that's what you do. You blame the Conservatives for everything. That's not true. The council, zero council tax rate, when it raises £9 million, £10 million. I remember in 2003 when one of the cabinet members resigned because he couldn't have the council tax rise, and we told him what would happen in 2003 if he carried on having zero council tax. And it's happened. If you'd have had £8 million in your budget, you wouldn't be cutting budget. We'd have more people at work, we'd have everybody. But no, he wanted to get elected. I'm going to go for zero rate council tax. Your predecessor wanted to get elected, and this is what we've done. So the Mayor of Mansfield and the independents have been responsible for managing the council. They were in charge. You're in charge now. The book stops with you. You can't blame anybody else. And they alone failed to make the tough decisions to get our finances back into line. Their lack of transparency, there's been a lot of quietness on this, delay, poor financial management has put us in the dire straits we see today. However, it's not all doom and gloom, is it? I'm a Mansfield lad. I remember what it was like 50 years ago. It's a lot better place, even though it's not as good as we'd like. So I want to share some positive news for you, because I always like good positive news. Makes us feel better, don't it? Yeah, we're all miserable. All, yes. Mr. Badley, our MP, Mr. Bradley, who is probably the hardest working MP in the Commons today. It's my opinion. Has been dedicated to his role, and he's actively following through on his promises that he made when elected, and his pledge to make Mansfield a better place. Thanks to his efforts and working along with the Levelling Up partnerships, that's you, Andy, the ministers in Parliament and the Conservatives, he has come up with the goods. I'll just go through a few you'd like to know. Mansfield is currently at the start of an exciting transformation that will bring about positive changes that our town hasn't seen in years. Thanks to the Conservative government, Ben's efforts, we have secured over £40 million of funding, yes, capital funding, to improve our public service and make Mansfield a better place. Sorry. I don't know what Alan Beale got in the 30 years there, but I think it was about like that. Just let me finish. Okay.
Thank you.
The funding, Mansfield a better place to live and work. I agree with that. The funding is being used to pay for some brilliant, game-changing projects around the districts I've just mentioned. So you get it into context. Regenerating some of our poorest areas, estates, Bellamy Road, Oak Tree, and improving the housing quality and access to local service residents. That is fact. We are creating a new youth hub on Bellamy Road, providing opportunities and support for young people anxiety and death from climbing down to social behaviour. Fact. We are constructing a new state-of-the-art on my division. I'm very proud of it. A new state-of-the-art 160 pupil special needs school on the old Ravensdale site. That is down to me, to Steve Garner, to people at CAS to bring that in. That's going to happen. The state goes in July, that's happening. Right. These achievements on their own are something to be proud of, and probably more than the previous MB brought into Mansfield in the 30 years in Parliament. He didn't bring us anything. Remember, that's why he got kicked out. We are implementing the South Mansfield, another one, we'll tell you some more. We are implementing the South Mansfield Family Hub to enhance the town's important children and family services. We're extending a school readiness programme at Nottingham Trent University to help our preschool children develop the skills and confidence they need for their education in the future. That's fact. We've secured the funding to build a terrific new facility for Burial Park at a cost of over £2 million. Fact. Right, we got the money, you've got the money, we got the money. As you can see, there's lots of stuff going on, but there's more. Ben and the partners helped secure funding for a terrific church. I'm saying this because when I was in Cabinet before, Warsaw was always the pain that always get people like Andy kicking up, Warsaw don't get enough. I understand. But we, the Conservatives, got the money for you to build a leisure centre in Walsall for your residents.
Point of order, Chair.
Well done.
Councillor Burgess, point of order.
That's just some clarification on that is while the rest of them come from the Towns Fund, the biggest funding partner is Mansfield District Council. So can we just have a point of clarification on that, please?
It says here, and his partners help secure the funding for the trip. That's better. In fact, you're one of his partners.
You just read what Ben's written for them.
He played a pivotal.
It's an election pledge.
Councillor Burgess, point of order.
Madam Chair, let me speak. It's not fair. They've had their say. Let me ask it. Hold on. Right. He played a pivotal role in obtaining the £20 million grant that's been.
You just stop.
Hold on. It says when Chair stands. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah. I haven't had my 5 minutes.
Let's sit down.
Finish off, Councillor Camilleri. You have about 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just let's have a bit of. So, where were we? Yeah, £20 million grant that's been awarded to the council to revitalise the town centre, focusing on Stockwell Gate and the old Beatles building. Now let's hope the council gets its finger out and works with the county council and get the job going, because if we don't get it going soon, it won't happen. So it's down to us. This is something the council's got to do. You know that, yeah? Don't, you know what? And finally, he's made, coming to the end. And finally, he's made good one of his election pledges and managed to get the £2 million to improve the Sainsbury's function. Wow. What you've got to say, that's impressive. And only in 5 years. It's not fair. No. Point of order, Madam Chair. It's not fair. I haven't been able to speak properly. You're not giving me time. Let me finish. I've got 2 paragraphs. Too bad. Well, that's impressive. This is all positive and exciting news. Chairman. Chair standing. Not fair, Madam Chair. It's not fair. It's not fair.
These members. Councillor Webster.
That's not fair.
No, thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's not fair, Andre. But I disagree with everything you've said.
Keep interrupting you then, Sean.
Yeah, you can interrupt me as much as you like. I agree, first of all, with the comments made by Councillor Wright. We often agree. We do sometimes, yeah. Andre's just made a very political statement about our MP, who, in my opinion, did nothing for Walsall. He didn't help when our leisure centre closed and the pool closed, did very little. And the efforts made by this council to actually deliver the hub in Walsall has been made by the Mayor and his cabinet, not through anything the MP's done. The funding that you keep referring to, while it's welcome, very welcome, it's nearly all capital funding that does nothing to help this council in its budget. And whilst I was vehemently against the plans of former mayors to invest outside of the district, I can understand why those decisions were taken. And in a way, at the time, the investments they made were starting to show dividends. The mistake in London, with hindsight, is very clear to see. But the people making the decisions at the time, although I was adamantly against them, went ahead and made those decisions, and it came back to bite them. It's no fault of this administration that we're in that position. You, Andre, said that you weren't part of the cabinet when those decisions were made. Fair enough. I think you might have been involved with the cabinet when the Berry Hill development took place, and the former Mayor Egerton decided to take liability for the quarry sides. Following the floods and the collapse, this administration, having just been elected in, had to pick up a huge bill. So we were faced with that dilemma which we had to overcome. Similarly, the flats in London,
We can't really go into it. Councillor Brown's been doing a lot of investigations and a lot of misinformation. You should speak to the current CEO about the situation and find out the truth behind the thing. He's a solicitor, so he should understand the legal implications of making these comments, but clearly they fall on deaf ears and he likes to make them. It's no fault of this administration that we've had to pick up a huge bill. The land that was invested in London should have been a golden egg. After all, most people think that if you buy property in London, you're going to make a profit from it. Even if the rental doesn't go, you can sell it for a fortune. Unfortunately, we're left holding something that's worthless until it's been remedied. So this council's got to foot the bill. I'm sure when things are sorted out, that investment may well be sold off at a profit, but that might be many years from now. We've got to suck it and see. This budget has been presented as a balanced budget, taking all political song and dance away from it. I fully support the budget that's been put forward by Councillor Whitby and the Mayor, and I think we should move to the vote and get everything sorted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wetton. Does anybody else have any comments? Councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very brief. I think people have gone on and it'd be like a whirlpool. To be very brief, I've got to say, because snags have kicked off and we need to get back. The only thing that I really opposed to is the reduction in road allowance, because I use all mine for charity work and stuff that I do in my ward, road banks and all this stuff. I use more than my ward allowance. But of course, and the grants to the CAB, Samaritans, CAH concern, all of these concerns, they all look after people and they have volunteers that don't cost them much money. So that value that's spent there is really a good investment because it helps with other people supporting them. But what I can say is I'd like to thank obviously Councillor Henshaw because he did do a good job of allowing everybody to speak. So and have their say, and whether you like it or not, you had your say. But I don't like that. So I won't be supporting the proposals, but I won't be voting against them either. I think that the fact that the people have put together a good budget generally, and I thank the Conservatives for putting theirs through, because at least we've had a few laughs. And I do think that the budget is going to go through as we know. So I'd like to say thank you very much for everybody for your work and all the officers that's been involved in producing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Answer. Councillor Tempest-Mitchell.
Thanks, Chair. I've not much to say, but I just want to come back on what Councillor Camilleri said is fact. On the 5th and the 7th of February 2018, our MP, leader of Nottinghamshire County Council, County Councillor from North Mansfield and prospective East Midlands Mayor, voted for 56% reduction on the previous year's funding to local councils. Fact. Since then, we're about 60% down, 60p on the pound. All councils across the country are in much the same position. And as Councillor Stevenson outlined earlier, even amazingly, MP Ben Bradley now knows that his votes for reductions in local authority funding are now biting him where it hurts. On the 4th of December last year, 33 leaders of county councils wrote a letter, it's going round, to the Prime Minister, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and Michael Grove. I don't want to go through it all because it's quite a long letter that Mr Bradley has signed. But I'll just read a few little bits that I thought were
important in relation to some of the things that have been said today. Local government is vital part of the fabric of our community. With every reduction in service of roads and road, councils and society makes it hard to provide important services businesses and communities rely on, from protecting the most vulnerable. I think Mr. Camilleri used those words earlier, regenerating the areas to even the simple things such as keeping our streets clean. It finishes off with failure to provide additional funds from central government would mean England's councils would face the prospect of outlining painful reductions to frontline services, raising council tax to the maximum permitted and using reserves at unsustainable levels to balance budgets. This is a situation, it's quite funny, we would all want to avoid in a general election year. Signed by 25 Conservative county council leaders, including our MP, the leader of the Tory County Council, our local county councillor is my county councillor, and I've written regional mayor wannabe. A Conservative have voted for cuts. Every single day I go to work, and every single day I see kids and families that can't afford to buy a new pair of shoes. That's because of Conservative cuts over the last 14 years. Nothing else. I see it every single day, and it takes me back to the 80s when I was in exactly the same position. And I'm damned if I'm going to sit here and not say anything about the fact that for 14 years, or over 14 years, we've lost 60% of the funds that provide absolute vital services to our most vulnerable, using CCN's words and Councillor Camilleri's words, the most vulnerable. And there's councillors here that deal with our most vulnerable every single day, whether they be kids, whether they be older people, whether they be disabled people, whoever. And terribly, we have to make these cuts. And there's other stuff going off that for some of us before our time in relation to the hotel, etc., or the building in London, etc. But the vast majority of services that we absolutely rely on in this town, let's just remind, over the last 14 years, this town and Ashfield are in the bottom 10% for social mobility. That is because, and I see it every single day, that is because education is slashed. Public services are slashed. About 12 years ago, I had to ring CAMS and say, if you don't give this kid a CAMS referral this week, I can't say that she'll be here next week. And we got an appointment the following day. Now a child has to wait until they've attempted suicide twice before they even get a referral. That is because of 14 years of austerity, which we are still experiencing, and in particular, amazingly, so is the guy that voted for it. I think in relation to this budget, there are some terrible cuts that we don't want to go with. However, I'm not going to gloss over. They're not being glossed over. We've discussed them all evening. Members across there have agreed with some, not with others, but they've been scrutinised and they've been voted on. And I suggest that we vote on this, but please think why we have to do it. 14 years of Tory cuts.
Town can.
Voted for by Ben Gladley.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Thank you. So just to put it to the elected mayor who's reserved the right, I just want to say myself that some of the examples given, particularly by Councillor Brown, has effectively described the impact of this Tory government have had on the people of Mansfield. I've driven to work some mornings and I see people queuing for a food bank, and it is a disgrace in 2024 that this is happening, and this is a direct result of cutbacks and it impacts on all our people. Thank you. Council elected mayor, which part of the morning would you like to?
I just wondered, you're the chair of the, are you supposed to make a partisan comment like that? Is that allowed? I'm not just asking a question.
I can make a comment, yes. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
It's really difficult to know where to start after all this information that's been flying around, a lot of it very inaccurate. It's the hypocrisy of certain members, especially in this chamber, who profess to be professionals, who behave one way outside the chamber and then come into this chamber and give us a right load of baloney, I'd call it at best. Now, this Conservative government has been the most politically motivated government we've ever had. I've worked constructively with our MP, and most of the funding has come from the work that's been done within Visitors Council and working with partners in the Place Board. But if you go back to 2019, when Ben was the Golden Balls, just in the first Red Wall MP, we were promised on a plate £25,000 in the very first of the funding. And we put forward a £12.5 million match funding to build affordable houses in the centre of Mansfield at White Hart Street. But guess what? The political landscape changed, and they delayed that because an election came and they offered that funding to another 150 councils, and because they didn't need Mansfield's vote, we got zero. That we could have moved forward, more than 4 years ago. Now, we've worked constructively, and when funding's come, we've done the groundwork because we know our communities where that funding would be most effective. And we've put that into practice in our UK Prosperity Fund, where we've put community grants out, where we've built on all the relationships with our voluntary services that we built on before and after and through COVID. So it's because Mansfield's got many awards, first steps at feeding Mansfield. Not other councils across the whole of the country have got those awards. We've got that because we really care for our communities, and when the funding comes along, we put it in the right place. Now, guess what? There's a general election just around the corner, and there's just been a raft of announcements. And even the ones that we welcome, we've put better constructive policies, ideas through. So when you talk about the youth service, we've said, okay, work with us, with our community centres that need some money. We'll put some money in from our HRA, and we'll get youth centres across the whole of Mansfield District in areas where they need it. But guess what? There's no money for putting, it's just for a shiny capital scheme. There's no money for actual the youth workers. So it's just a charade. I welcome all these things, but Sainsbury's Junction, it's a road scheme. It's not a levelling up scheme. It's just political gain because he's promised it for 5 or 6 years, ever since he's been in, and look, he's trying to dip at the tape and say, I've delivered it. Well, I welcome it, but it should not be coming out of a levelling up fund that is not for that purpose. It should be coming out of the transportation fund. When it comes to taking credit, you guys taking credit for things that you've done at county, and we welcome that. But I didn't hear the same praise for all the work that the officers and the councillors have done in this administration to bring those funding forward, only for what you've done at County Hall. And with regard to the income, the community charges, yes, the only time we actually went to zero is because we were leading on the cost of living crisis, that we were first on it, and the rises just kept coming from County Hall, and is putting 90% of the burden on our councillors, not the small amount that we tried to help out. So in conclusion, I can't sit here and listen to all this manufacturing of the Tories have come and saved Mansfield. Excuse me, did I interrupt you during your speech? I did, so you, I think I'll just.
Can you be quiet, please, Councillor?
On the last word,
The Mayor continue.
there's hypocrisy for you.
Councillor Whitby?
Nothing more to add, Chair. Let's move to the vote.
Thank you. There are 8 recommendations as follows. Number 1, that the general fund revenue budget for 24-25 financial year be approved as set out in Appendix 1. Number 2, that the general fund revenue budget for 25-26 to 26-27 financial year be approved in principle, subject to an annual review as set out in Appendix 1. Number 3, that the housing revenue account HRA revenue budget for 2024-25 financial year be approved as set out in Appendix 3. Number 4, that the housing revenue account revenue budget for the 24-25 to 25-26 financial years be approved in principle, subject to an annual review as set out in Appendix 3. Number 5, that Mansfield District Council 24/25 Bandy Council tax be approved at £200.54, which was a 2.99% increase on 23-24 council tax. Number 6, that council dwelling rents be increased by 7.7% for the 24-25 financial year, in line with the government guideline rents. Number 7, that the general fund consolidated capital programme as summarised in Table 3 in Appendix 4 be approved. Number 8, that the housing revenue account consolidated capital programme as summarised in Table 4 and Appendix 5 to be approved. I'm now going to pass over to the Democratic officer who will take a recorded vote. Again, when the name is called out, if you could tell whether you're voting for, against, or abstaining. Elected Mayor. For. Councillor Abbs. Councillor Anderson.
Against.
Abstain.
Councillor Beatrice. Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Bergen.
For.
Councillor Callaghan.
For.
Councillor Camilleri. Councillor Clegg. Councillor Copshead.
For.
Councillor Dines. Councillor Ellis.
For.
Councillor Garner. Councillor Hammersley. Councillor Hartshorn. Councillor Lynn Henshaw. Councillor Paul Henshaw. Councillor Hughes. Councillor Inkle. Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Langrick.
Against.
Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Moxon.
Against.
Councillor Richardson. Councillor Stevenson. For. Councillor Swinscoe.
For.
Councillor Tempest Mitchell. Councillor Walker. Councillor Wetton.
For.
Councillor Whitby. For. And Councillor Wright.
Abstentions.
Abstentions.
So thank you. The recommendation is carried. It's 25 for, 5 against and 3 abstentions. Thank you. Just before we move forward, the meeting does have to end at past unless somebody moves to extend this meeting. Do we have a proposal? Councillor Henshaw? Seconder, Councillor Bergin. All those for? Extension? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. So move on to item 8 of the agenda, the minutes from the Polling Place Review Committee. I'd like to invite Councillor Abs to present his report.
Thank you, Chair. Something a bit lighter. Okay, I hope. As the Polling Place Subcommittee Chairman, I'd like to make my notes. Every 5 years, the returning officer is required to review the UK parliamentary polling places within the district. Ahead of the next UK parliamentary general election, new boundaries were developed by the Boundary Commission for England. The Polling Place Review Committee therefore met initially in September 23 to commence a review of the polling places in the district with the contents of the new boundary changes and approve the timetable in which the review would be conducted. On October the 6th, 2023, a public consultation of the proposals put forward to the returning officer began. The involvement writing over to 50 identified stakeholders through representations were received as a result of the public consultation. The comments related to Mill Lane, Mill Valley and Grange Farm Ward. Further officer investigation was conducted in checking the suitability of the comments, which were no amendments were made at the initial proposals. The details of these representations and retaining officers' responses are found in section 8 of the report. On 20th of December 2023, the Polling Station Review Committee considered the proposals and approved referral to the proposals, polling districts and the polling places for full council approval. As chair of the subcommittee, I therefore propose the polling districts and the polling places as contained in Appendix 1 of the report approved by the council, which will use in future elections. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you wish to propose? Seconder?
I'll second it, Chair, and reserve the right.
Thank you. Does anybody want to comment on the motion? No comments, so I'll put the motion to the vote. This will be by a show of hands. All those for? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. Now move on to item 9 of the agenda, appointment to Polling Place Review Committee. And I'd like to invite the Chief Executive Officer to present his report.
Thank you, Chair. You can find the pages within the bundle on pages 123 to 125. The annual meeting of council on the 23rd of May 2023 agreed the composition of the appointments to the council's committees following the district council elections. Notification has been received from Labour Group that Councillor Jackson wishes to step down from one of the Labour Group seats on the Polling Places Review Committee, and that Councillor Bergen wishes to be appointed as a replacement to that committee. The requirements of the political balance for local authorities are set out in the Local Government and Housing Act 1989 and the Local Government Act 2000. The proposals contained within this report maintain that political balance of the committees concerned. The recommendation is therefore that Councillor Bergen be appointed to the Polling Places Review Committee to replace Councillor Jackson. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to comment on the motion? Apologies. Does anybody have any questions for the CEO? Thank you. Could I have a proposer, please?
Those have the right.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Henshaw.
It was.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to comment on this motion? Anything from Councillor Abbs? Is a proposal? No. No, thank you. Now put the motion to the vote. It'll be by a show of hands. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. Move on to item 10 of the agenda motions. Are there any motions for the meeting?
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. That brings us to the close of the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending.